All right, man, peace. So it seems as though everyone is starting to chime in on the Kawhi Leonard situation with the San Antonio Spurs, including one of these seminal figures in San Antonio Spurs history, that being Mr. David Robinson, who was one of the NBA's most dominant players from the late 80s all the way through the early 2000s. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Oh, the drama. What will the Spurs do with Kawhi? Our next guest might have some insight into San Antonio's plan. He's a former NBA MVP, a two-time NBA champ. We welcome the Admiral, David Robinson. Hello, David.
Thanks, Molly. Good to be here.
Let me get this in also. You're obviously here with us on behalf of the most reliable network, Verizon, and they're helping customers keep up with the action by allowing them to stream the draft live on their mobile devices no matter where they are. So we love that access. David, you know where I'm starting. All this drama with Kawhi. How do you think the Spurs should handle this?
Well, it's really not about how the Spurs can handle it right now. It's pretty much just about what Kawhi Leonard is going to be willing to tolerate. Will Kawhi Leonard be willing to go back to the San Antonio Spurs and believe their promises that they're going to improve their treatment of him? Because they are going to have to be engineered as an organization in regards to how they conduct themselves with their top athletes, because Kawhi Leonard is not going to be willing to conform to a lot of the conduct that San Antonio is accustomed to treating their stars with. How they treated David Robinson, how they treated Tim Duncan is not going to fly with Kawhi Leonard. So I think that the chances of Kawhi Leonard coming back to the San Antonio Spurs are slim to none.
Wow. I mean, I think we're handling it the way we always do. You know, we don't put everything out there in public, and we try to get face-to-face, sit down and talk about things. And I think that Kawhi and Pop still have a tremendous amount of respect for each other. I think they really, they still believe each other. It's just a matter of, hey, let's sit down and let's try to figure this thing out. And I think
No, brother, I have to disagree with you there. No, I do not believe that Kawhi Leonard still has the same respect for Greg Popovich that he had when he was first drafted by that organization, or I should say when they traded for him. Because if I remember correctly, he was drafted by the Indiana Pacers and then traded to the San Antonio Spurs for George Hill. If I'm wrong about that, one of you brothers can correct me. But whenever you have a traumatic event occur within a relationship, that relationship is going to be tested. Because if you cannot maintain your fidelity to me during times of adversity, what really are we doing here? And that's in any situation in life, in any relationship dynamic in life. Anybody can be with you when you're playing the best defense in the NBA, when you're winning NBA Finals MVPs. But now, when you go down with a debilitating injury and you're stating that I'm not fully healed, even though the medical staff is saying that I am, and as opposed to quote-unquote supporting me, you decide that you're going to declare a code red on me. I don't know how they can come back from that.
I think I have a lot of trust in our guys. I think we will figure it out.
What are your thoughts, David? And thanks again for being on the show. But knowing the Spurs organization the way that you do, understanding its first-class reputation, the gold standard that it is, certainly nobody is here to impugn the character and the integrity of the great Greg Popovich or R.C. Buford or Peter Holt for that matter. Your thoughts on all of this noise about Kawhi not appreciating how the Spurs as an organization have handled his injury situation, and that is what has led to him wanting to leave.
I'm not quite sure how it could be an appreciation issue on the part of Kawhi Leonard when he's the one who has played stellar basketball for the last 3 years for their organization. Kawhi Leonard is the person who has led the San Antonio Spurs to what many basketball viewers, pundits, aficionados would consider championship contender status for the last 3 to 4 years. So what exactly does he owe them? He was hurt, Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah, you know, it's a tough situation. It's a bad situation. I think a lot of it has been a lack of communication. You know, everybody gets frustrated when you don't really talk face to face, when you hear this or you hear that, or you read this in the paper, or you hear somebody said. I love
Communication is a very big issue in this society. One of the main reasons why communication is such a huge issue is because people are more concerned with protecting their image than they are with actually making sure that they're transparent. Because what oftentimes is connected with transparency is vulnerability. people don't want to state how they really feel about a certain issue because they're worried that what they say will be used against them. And to a degree, that's understandable. But in matters of business, it's incumbent upon the organization to set the standard for professionalism and not try to go behind their player's back and make him look like someone who's not putting forth 100% effort. It's also incumbent upon the organization to make sure that they establish an accurate psychological profile of everyone that they're dealing with so that they don't think that they can treat everyone the same way, because in life you cannot treat everyone the same way.
I love the fact that Pop just went and sat down and talked with him. I mean, I think that's the way you get through things like this.
Well, how come he didn't do that before? Why did he decide to fly out and just sit down and talk with Kawhi once he realized how serious Kawhi Leonard was about leaving their organization? Sometimes people can take kindness for weakness. Sometimes people can take meekness for weakness. And oftentimes when people see someone with a docile nature, they just automatically assume that I'll be able to walk over that person whenever I want. And it's the docile people that you have to make sure that you watch out for, because when they decide that they're going to turn the corner in regards to how they're going to allow themselves to be treated, oftentimes it's very severe.
I mean, obviously as a franchise, Kawhi has been huge to us. He's been he's been an important part of the process of us continuing being competitive. And so from our standpoint, you know, it's going to be very hard to give up a guy like Kawhi. We want him to stay. We hope he's going to stay. But, you know, the only way we're going to know that is to get in his face and say, hey, look, let's sit down. Let's talk about this thing. You know, tell me the reasons why you want to leave. What can we do? And maybe there's some place we can come to some kind of a agreement.
David Robinson, I believe that time has passed already. They had an opportunity to communicate with Kawhi Leonard throughout the NBA season. They didn't like what his side had to say, so they decided that they were going to create a narrative around him. That's why he's upset.
David, when Tim Duncan was drafted by the Spurs, I was very impressed, even at that age, with the way you handled that. You said we need to run the offense through him. You were a guy who not that long ago dropped 71 points in a game and won the MVP of the league, and you were still really good. And yet here's this guy right out of college, and you go, we're going to run it through him.
You know why that is, Max Kellerman? Because throughout the 1990s, David Robinson pretty much established that even though he was a great player, he was not great enough to lead his team to a championship. So what he was able to evaluate, and kudos to him, is that he makes a championship-level second banana. And that's what he was on those two championship teams with the San Antonio Spurs in 1999 and 2003. David Robinson had many opportunities throughout the 1990s to establish that he was a top echelon player. He was never able to do that. He did win an MVP award in 1995. And in the playoffs in 1995, Hakeem Olajuwon showed him that even though you have the MVP award, I'm still the best player in the NBA right now. So I can't put David Robinson up there with the Charles Barkleys, with the Hakeem Olajuwons, because David Robinson constantly showed that even though he was great and he would have these magnificent regular seasons, when the playoffs would come and it was left up to him to put his team on his back and lead them to the quote-unquote promised land, he was never able to do so. So once again, I give him credit. When he saw that an even greater player than him was drafted by his franchise, a truly preeminent player, a top 10 all-time player in Tim Duncan, was brought into the fold, he stepped back and allowed Tim Duncan to spread his wings.
Like the kind of culture that you were leading there as the leader of the team that's the best kind of culture you want in sports. That's the way. And Tim Duncan took that and did the same sort of thing throughout his career. He said, yes, the Spurs way. It seemed to me that Kawhi was the same kind of guy, intensely competitive, and other than LeBron, the best in the business, in my opinion. And yet now this happens. What do you think changed? Or did I misread Kawhi?
Did you misread Kawhi? Did you misread the San Antonio Spurs organization, Max Kellerman? I'm trying to figure out what exactly is it that Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith are missing in this situation. It's almost like if Stephen A. Smith or Max Kellerman were to get a debilitating disease in their vocal cords. And they stated, I have to be out from work for 3 months because my doctor states that I have a debilitating vocal cord disease and I can't speak on camera. And ESPN had their other anchors trying to imply that you were faking that malady or that illness or whatever it was. I'm sure that you would say to yourself, you know what? I can't work for ESPN anymore because they have no respect for me. They don't believe what I'm saying, even though I'm providing medical records, doctor reports, etc. I'm going to have to go work with Fox Sports 1 because I need to be respected.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, Kawhi, obviously, it seemed like the perfect transition. He's embraced the system, really played extremely well for us in great situations. In the finals, he was fantastic. And it seemed to be a seamless transition. But anybody who's been in this sport for a long time knows that, nothing's easy about transitioning, right? How hard is it to keep teams together when you have talent?
It's difficult to transition in life as well as in sports, David Robinson. It's not just a sports issue where transition can be difficult, but change is a part of life.
Talent. Everybody doesn't have the same personality. Timmy and I were like brothers, and we talked, we communicated, we were very, very close. And
yeah, I heard.
And with Kawhi is, he's quieter. He's not the same, as Timmy and I like to get out there. We like to kind of interact and
yeah, sure. That's exactly what Tim Duncan was known for, his effervescent personality. David Robinson, give me a break. Tim Duncan may have been far more communicative than Kawhi Leonard, but Tim Duncan is far from someone who's known for being charismatic. What he was a good soldier. He was a company man. And Kawhi Leonard, I believe, was someone who could have been groomed into being a good soldier. I don't know if he would ever have been a company man per se, but I think that he was in the process of being groomed into a good soldier. Maybe he might not have been fully invested in being a leader on a team where he felt like the organization had a lot of cult-like traits. But the fact of the matter is that he had a great 2016-2017 regular season without Tim Duncan, and once again, they met the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference Finals, and he was dominating them. So this notion that Kawhi Leonard just had a meltdown after Tim Duncan left is something that you really cannot substantiate. I'm someone who's willing to broach the subject that maybe being a leader on that team was something that he realized he did not want to do. But I think that what pushed him over the edge was the situation with his leg.
And I think Kawhi's figuring that stuff out. How do you become a superstar? Who wants to follow in Tim Duncan's footsteps? I mean, that's crazy. And Kawhi's got to figure out what kind of player he wants.
But he seemed like he could do it, David.
They did. I mean, from a playing
he's the
standpoint,
perfect candidate to do it.
No question. From a game standpoint, he has the game that speaks up to it. But Timmy was a great leader, and I don't care what you say. When Timmy walks out of the locker room, a vacuum just happens. I mean, there's incredible leadership, experience. People trusted Tim. They followed Tim. They wanted to follow him anywhere he went. And that's what Kawhi's got to get that, right? People got to want to follow him into war. And
well, you have to be born with that. David Robinson, everyone is not a born leader. And people lead in different ways. Some people lead by their words. Other people lead by their actions. If you're truly gifted, you can lead by your words and your actions. Like a Julius Caesar. When you read about him, he was someone with an unbelievable amount of charisma. And he was also a great soldier on the battlefield. Everybody can't be that. You have to allow Kawhi Leonard to be who he is. And that's part of the problem, as I've stated incessantly in regards to this issue. The San Antonio Spurs have done a very poor job of trying to understand who Kawhi Leonard is and leaving him alone. Some people you just have to leave alone. It's like you work with some people in the corporate office space, and they're not the most congenial, they're not the most outgoing, but they do a great job at what they do. So what? They're not going to hang out with you after work. They're not going to go to the office parties and cut a rug. But they're going to do a hell of a job in what they're required to do, what they've been hired to do. So leave them alone. Kawhi Leonard is one of those people. Greg Popovich tried to push his buttons because he is a manipulator. He gets off on being a Svengali, being a puppet master, and it blew up in his face.
And after watching this season, you kind of like, I'm not sure that the guys had that feeling.
But David, everybody's mental and emotional makeup is not the same. Kawhi Leonard is not you and Tim Duncan.
Agreed. Good job, Stephen A. Smith. You should consider that when you state unequivocally that the only reason why Kawhi Leonard is complaining is because he wants to be in LA.
You know this. That means Greg Popovich and the Spurs organization knows this, and they've always known this. So taking that into account, what level of culpability do you hand to the Spurs as an organization for apparently not seeing this for what it is and not seeing this coming? Because from what my sources told me, when the news came out that Kawhi Leonard said he wants to be traded, R.C. Buford was shocked. He had heard about it from somebody else before he heard about it from Kawhi Leonard. Yeah. So it was almost like he was blindsided.
Because R.C. Buford, like many of the other people in the Spurs front office, took Kawhi Leonard's meekness for weakness. They thought they were just going to be able to walk all over him, use the media to try to break him down, and then have him come back to their franchise sheepishly. Because their attitude is, well, we can offer him the most money, so we know he's just going to follow the money. See, once you don't worship money, there's very little power that people have over you. And that's one of the main issues with the so-called black man. People feel like they can get you to follow after them because they believe that the so-called black man worships two things, vagina and money. And those are the sources of the black man's problems, because for the most part, the so-called black man has been trained to believe that he always has to go wherever there's the most money and wherever there's the most loose women. And that's why the so-called black woman oftentimes shows a disdain for you, because she believes that she can manipulate you. Once you're able to discipline yourself in those areas, the sky's the limit in regards to the understanding that you can attain for yourself.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge, right? If you feel a certain way, you got to communicate that. Like as a man, as a leader, you got to be able to communicate to your teammates. Your teammates should not be wondering what's going on.
Well, here's the problem, David Robinson, and I agree with you. Communication is a major key to life, whether you're a leader or not, but especially if you're a leader. But here's the problem. If you're Kawhi Leonard, you're stating, why is there confusion in the locker room when you already know that the reason why I'm out is because I'm stating that I went to a second opinion to evaluate my medical issue, and they've stated that my leg still has the same problem that I had from last year. And I'm sure that his teammates heard that already. The confusion for his teammates came because the Spurs front office and the Spurs medical staff were demonizing Kawhi Leonard through the media, and were telling them that Kawhi should be back because we've already cleared him. So the issue is not with Kawhi Leonard. The issue is with the communication from the Spurs front office to their players.
Yeah, management should not be wondering what's going on. The fans should not be wondering what's going on. Do you guys ever wonder what's going on with LeBron James? No. He makes it very clear to you what's going on. So I think that's a part of the maturity process, right?
Well, fortunately for LeBron James, he's never had a serious debilitating injury and had doubts or aspersions cast upon his story in regards to when he was healthy enough to play. I think that had LeBron James been in the same predicament as a Kawhi Leonard, we may have seen him become more reticent as opposed to being transparent in regards to what's going on with him. If he felt like he could not trust the media storyline or the narratives being put forth by the front office on whatever team he was on, he may go into a shell.
Right, and so you say you should have known this about Kawhi. Kawhi's growing up. He's still a young guy, and he's still trying to figure out who he's going to be. And so, yeah, you always think and hope that people are going to kind of, go into the position that, that you kind of hope they're going to be. But I mean, this is a different world, man, with all the social media, and you're talking to everybody, and everybody's talking to you, and then all of a sudden, oh, who knows? Somebody can come in and say, oh, why don't you come and play with us in L.A., or why don't you...
Ding! Now, what is David Robinson implying right there? He's implying the same thing that I've been stating in regards to this issue. That LeBron James and his team saw that there was a weakness there. There was a fracture there between Kawhi Leonard and the San Antonio Spurs, and they're taking advantage of it by putting in his ear that you should request a trade to the Los Angeles Lakers so we could team up. That's what David Robinson is stating right there.
On that note, I got to ask you about that, because obviously we all want to know where Kawhi is, but what about LeBron? We're hearing potentially a super team in LA. What do you think he should do?
And Molly Karen picked up on that as well. because as soon as he implied it, she said, oh, good. And as you can see by the transition that Molly Karam made from talking about Kawhi Leonard to talking about LeBron James, she also picked up on what David Robinson was trying to imply when he made that statement.
What do I think LeBron should do?
You think
well,
he
we
should go
got
to
to
the
start in
Lakers?
San Antonio. I don't know. I mean, no,
I agree.
you know what? I would have thought
That's really where he should go, to be honest with you. But I don't think that LeBron is ever going to humble himself to that level.
thought that would have been a great situation for us. But you know, it's I don't know. I wouldn't even pretend to give LeBron any advice. I mean, he's done a phenomenal job with the things that he is doing on the court now. I'm a big Michael Jordan guy. I mean, that was my era. But LeBron's making a great argument to be, you know, one of the greatest, if not the greatest.
Let me ask you.
You ain't no big Michael Jordan guy. A lot of these players that went up against Jordan in the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, they try to act like they're quote-unquote big Michael Jordan guys. I recently saw that with Clyde Drexler on the show Undisputed, where he made that same statement, and then he went and picked LeBron. A lot of those guys are still upset with Jordan because he dominated them throughout the 90s, and they view LeBron James as a person that they can prop up over Jordan to kind of chip away at Jordan's legacy, because they were upset with him all throughout the 90s because Jordan would beat them and then talk shit to them about it basically throughout the years. David Robinson was on the first Dream Team with Michael Jordan, so he witnessed a lot of the trash talking that Jordan utilized to try to break down his opponents. Basically, the only reason why Jordan chose to play on the first Dream Team was so that he could scout all the other top players in the NBA and see what their weaknesses and their strengths were, how hard they worked, etc. That's how Jordan tried to justify to himself deciding to play on that first Dream Team, because he did not want to partake in the first Dream Team. He had already won a gold medal for the United States in 1984. But just getting back to the point, a lot of these great players from the 90s, they view LeBron James as someone that they can use to try to chip away at Jordan's quote-unquote legacy. And also, David Robinson is acting as a pitchman for the San Antonio Spurs. He knows that LeBron would fit in very well with their franchise.
Ask you it this way, though. Would you like to see him personally stay in Cleveland or leave?
I'd like to see him not in the West. How about that? Unless
Okay.
he's with San Antonio.
Okay, fair
so,
enough.
you know, he would make a big difference for any team in the West. And so, you know, as a Spurs fan, I don't want to see that.
Got you.
You know.
It's important that I squeeze this in before we let you go, David. I have to ask you this. Would the San Antonio Spurs, the organization that you know, ever do anything to help the Lakers? Like do business with them where Kawhi ultimately ends up wanting to be in LA? Would the San Antonio Spurs ever facilitate such a thing in any way?
Not willingly. But, you know, unless it helped us become a better team. Pop and RC will do whatever it takes to help us become a better team as well. So, I mean, we have a good track record of looking out for players. I mean, you look at the guys that have come through our team, and they've gone on to have good success. And I think Pop has really looked out for players. So we will do everything we can for the players' sake, but the franchise, yeah, if it's going to make us better, then yeah, that could happen.
All right, picking up what we're putting down there. Before we let you go, David, draft, obviously tonight. Oh, I asked Chauncey Billups this earlier. He said DeAndre Ayton. Who's going to be the best player in this year's class?
Ooh, the best player. You know, I think, I was around that Duke team a lot, so I got a chance to see Marvin Bagley, and I just think his game is so geared for the pros. He's phenomenal talent, and I think he's going to end up being the best player in this class. But I think there are a lot of guys down deep that you're going to find. There are some phenomenal players. This is a good draft. It's a deep draft, and I think you're going to find a lot of late first round and maybe even some early second round guys that surprise you.
All right, David, appreciate you and your loyalty of your Spurs.
There you go. Go Spurs.
All right, coming up.
But anyway, that's pretty much it on David Robinson, the shill for the San Antonio Spurs. Now, I'm just playing. David Robinson does a good job representing his franchise. They were very loyal to him because he was very loyal to them. They have a very militaristic culture there on that team, and he fit in perfect with them. He was the seminal figure in establishing that culture. But anyway, we'll see what happens with Kawhi. Peace.